grandmother's vehicle got shut up. Our family cycle of violence always ends up in a familiar place.
Marshals Season 2 trailer, Dutton Ranch crossover confirmed? Beth and Rip return changes everything. Have we just received the biggest clue yet that Marshals Season 2 is about to connect directly with Dutton Ranch? And what if I told you that Kayce's next battle may be far more dangerous than anything he faced in Season 1? After the shocking finale, many fans believed the story would simply continue with Tom Weaver's betrayal and the fight for East Camp. But now, new clues are pointing towards something much bigger. A crossover that could completely change the future of both shows. The most surprising part is that all of the signs seem to lead back to Beth and Rip. So, does this mean the Dutton family is finally coming back together? Could Kayce be heading straight into a war that will force him to ask his family for help? And if Beth and Rip really return, what will happen when they discover the threats surrounding East Camp? Believe me, the answers may be even more shocking than fans expected. Let's take a closer look at everything we know so far. First of all, I think we need to talk about the ending of Season 1 because many viewers may have missed just how important those final moments really were. On the surface, it looked like the story was simply setting up Tom Weaver as the next major villain. We saw the attacks, the betrayals, and the growing danger surrounding East Camp. However, when you look deeper, it becomes clear that the finale was doing something much larger. It was quietly creating the perfect bridge between Marshals and Dutton Ranch. The biggest clue was Tate. Out of all the places Tate could have gone after the chaos in Montana, the writers specifically chose Texas. And honestly, I do not think that was a coincidence. In television, locations are chosen very carefully, especially during a season finale. If the writers wanted Tate to simply leave Montana for safety, they could have sent him almost anywhere. Instead, they sent him directly toward the place most closely connected to Beth and Rip. That decision immediately raised questions. Why Texas? Why now? And why make Tate's journey such an important part of the finale if it was not going to lead somewhere significant? The more I think about it, the more it feels like Season 2 will begin with Tate carrying information that could change everything. Remember, Tate has now witnessed more violence and betrayal than any child should ever have to experience. He knows about the attacks. He knows about the dangers surrounding East Camp. He knows that Kayce is fighting enemies from every direction. And perhaps most importantly, he knows that Kayce is trying to carry all of these burdens alone. If Tate arrives in Texas and tells Beth and Rip everything that has happened, how could they possibly stay out of it? Beth has never been the type of person who sits back and watches family members suffer. And Rip has always been willing to do whatever it takes to protect the people he cares about. That is why many fans believe Tate may become the key that finally pulls these worlds together. At the same time, Kayce's situation is becoming more dangerous than ever before. During Season 1, most of the threats came from outside forces trying to gain control of East Camp. But Season 2 feels different. Now the danger is personal. Tom Weaver has already proven that he is willing to hide behind friendly faces while secretly working against Kayce. That makes him much more dangerous than a normal enemy. The worst part is that Kayce still may not fully understand who he is dealing with. While Tom continues presenting himself as an ally, he could be building a plan that reaches far beyond East Camp itself. What if the attacks we have already seen were only the beginning? What if Tom's real objective is something much larger than simply acquiring land? And what if Kayce is walking directly into a trap without even realizing it? Another detail that caught my attention is how isolated Kayce has become. Throughout Season 1, we watched him lose people he cared about, face constant pressure, and struggle to keep everything together. Yet despite all of that, he continued fighting. That determination is one of the reasons fans love his character so much. However, Season 2 may finally push him to a breaking point. Every hero eventually reaches a moment where they cannot win alone. And honestly, I think that moment is coming for Kayce. The enemies are becoming stronger, the stakes are becoming higher, and the consequences of failure are becoming more serious. If East Camp falls, it will not simply be a property lost. It will represent the destruction of everything Kayce has been trying to protect since the beginning. This is exactly why the possibility of a Dutton Ranch crossover feels so important. It is not just about bringing back popular characters. It is about giving Kayce the support he desperately needs before everything collapses around him. The question is not whether trouble is coming. Trouble is already here. The real question is whether Beth and Rip will arrive before it is too late. And if they do, will they be enough to stop the disaster that seems to be growing with every passing day? Because based on the clues we have seen so far, Kayce's biggest battle is only just beginning. Now, let's talk about the person who could become the biggest threat in Marshals Season 2. Because the more I think about Tom Weaver's actions, the more convinced I become that we still have not seen his true plan. During the Season 1 finale, it looked like Tom had already revealed his hand. The clues pointed directly toward him. His ranch foreman was connected to the attack. The suspicious vehicle matched the one Andrea was investigating. And the final conversation strongly suggested that Tom was secretly pulling the strings behind the scenes. However, I think Season 2 is going to show us that Tom's operation is much larger than anyone realizes. In fact, I would not be surprised if the attacks on East Camp were only the first phase of a much bigger strategy. What makes Tom so dangerous is that he does not act like a traditional villain. He does not openly declare war. He does not make threats in public. Instead, he hides behind trust, friendship, and patience. He waits for the perfect moment to strike. And honestly, those kinds of enemies are always the hardest to defeat. The most interesting part is that Tom currently has something that no other enemy has ever had: access. He has already managed to get close to Kayce's world. He understands how East Camp operates. He knows the emotional importance of the land. And most importantly, he understands Kayce himself. That gives him a huge advantage. While Kayce is focused on protecting his family and preserving East Camp's future, Tom could be quietly building influence from the shadows. This is why I think Season 2 may begin with Tom appearing completely innocent. Instead of immediately exposing himself, he will probably continue pretending to be a friend. He may even help Kayce solve smaller problems just to earn more trust. The more trust he gains, the easier it becomes for him to manipulate events behind the scenes. But there is another person who could become a major factor in this story. And that person is Dolly. Honestly, her situation may end up being one of the most emotional storylines of the entire season. At the end of Season 1, we saw her feelings for Kayce become impossible to ignore. She clearly cares about him. She clearly wants to be part of his life. But what happens if she discovers what her father is really doing? This is where things could become incredibly complicated. Imagine being forced to choose between your family and the person you love. That is exactly the position Dolly may find herself in. If Tom's crimes are eventually exposed, Dolly could be caught directly in the middle of the conflict. And that creates a fascinating possibility for Season 2. What if Dolly does not know the truth at first? What if she genuinely believes her father is innocent? In that situation, she might defend him when accusations begin to surface. She might even argue with Kayce and push him away. And if that happens, Tom wins because he creates division exactly where he wants it. However, there is another possibility that could be even more dramatic. What if Dolly discovers the truth before anyone else? What if she learns that her father was connected to the attacks and has been lying the entire time? Suddenly, she would hold information capable of changing everything. She could become the person who finally exposes Tom and saves Kayce before it is too late. At the same time, we cannot forget about Calvin and Belle. Their fate remains one of the biggest unanswered questions heading into Season 2. The finale left fans in a state of complete suspense. We saw them walk directly into danger, and the situation looked incredibly bad. However, I personally believe they survived. The reason is simple. Their story feels unfinished. Throughout Season 1, we watched their relationship slowly evolve. We saw trust begin to form between them. We saw them overcome personal struggles. And just when it seemed like they were finally moving toward a better future, the attack happened. From a storytelling perspective, it feels like there is still much more left to explore. If Calvin and Belle survive, they could become the biggest problem for Tom Weaver. Remember, they were actively following Andrea's investigation. They were getting closer to the truth. They were connecting clues that others had missed. If they managed to escape the attack, there is a very good chance they also learned something important before the shooting began. Information can be just